Well, this week you may notice extra emergency vehicles and public safety officers running around the community in tactical gear, hazmat suits, and bomb suits. This is all part of a statewide drill Des Moines is hosting.
New at 10, conspiracy theories have now been floating around for weeks about a military operation in West Texas. But what's really happening?
Special Operations Command will be training with other armed units beginning in July in 5 states.
Jade Helm for July 15, 2015 through September 15, 2015.
After an Army presentation last month, Big Spring officials gave them permission to train within city boundaries.
ISIS released a new video today claiming to show the mass execution of Ethiopian Christians in Libya.
The latest ISIS video delivered a clear and direct threat to Christians in the Middle East.
You will not have safety, even in your dreams, until you embrace Islam.
Then militants carried out what appears to be a mass execution. Masked men lined up 2 groups of Ethiopian Christians, shooting some captives and beheading others.
Just this week, Michelle Bachmann actually predicted that I would bring about the biblical end of days.
Gas is being deployed by the police. It's being thrown back by the officers. As you can see, smoke is engulfing this entire area. The situation is escalating.
Breaking news tonight in Baltimore, where there's high tension. Despite a curfew, some people are still in the streets challenging heavily armed police, and it looks like the beginning of a long night.
Turn around and go home. Minutes after a 10 p.m. curfew went into effect.
National Guard troops in armored Humvees are patrolling the now empty streets of Baltimore.
The National Guard represents a last resort in order to restore order. And I issued the executive order less than 30 seconds after requested by the city.
After a day marked by property destruction, looting, and fires, Maryland State Police are now running the show in the city of 620,000.
Now, here in Baltimore, the unrest is spreading across the city. It's happening in the west, in the east, and again, there's a dozen buildings on fire.
We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
Baltimore city families deserve peace and safety in their communities.
Caught on camera now, a 6.6 earthquake hit the coast of Taiwan this morning. There was also a tsunami warning for the coast of Japan, but we can't tell you that has now been lifted. Wow.
We begin with breaking news overnight, a devastating and deadly earthquake in Nepal. The quake was a magnitude 7.9.
It was just after noon when the killer earthquake struck and triggered chaos on the streets of the capital, Kathmandu. The quake ripped through roads. Centuries-old temples and monuments came tumbling down.
Suddenly, without warning, the shockwaves hit Nepal.
The ground shook quite hard for, I would say, possibly about 30 seconds.
Shaken residents then jolted by aftershocks, the terror returning again and again.
Every time that there was a tremor, everyone would say, it's coming again, the panic would rise.
Religious temples and historical monuments in pieces everywhere.
This morning, buildings buckling in Nepal. A 6.7 aftershock sending an already shaken community running and turned this once gleaming monument into a pile of bricks. The original magnitude 7.8 earthquake felt by nearly 6 million people in Nepal, India, China and Bangladesh, even unleashing massive avalanches 100 miles away on Mount Everest.
Among the dead, American climber Dan Fredenberg, a Google executive.
Officials say it is the worst to hit the region in more than 80 years.
That volcano erupting back to life for the first time in 40 years. Tonight, a state of emergency as they now prepare for an even bigger eruption. Dramatic new images streaming in tonight. This drone footage, plumes of smoke filling the sky.
The eruption from the Calbuco volcano came with little warning, spewing a mushroom cloud of ash and smoke more than 6 miles up into the sky above southern Chile. A second blast, less than 24 hours later, put on a dazzling display as lightning bolts of static electricity shot through the orange plume of smoke. More than 4,000 people evacuated from within a 12-mile radius of the volcano, which showered nearby communities with ash.
Experts worry that the ash could contaminate water and cause widespread respiratory problems.
I cannot even begin to imagine what that must have been like to walk out of their homes and look up and see that.
It looks like Independence Day, like the movie, right?
Absolutely.
Where everything's falling apart.
It almost doesn't look real.
Yeah.
Locals have started returning to their homes 4 days after Chile's Calbuco volcano violently erupted. The volcano erupted last week, taking the country by surprise. A photographer captured this image in the ash cloud. It looks like a human form is emerging from the plume.
Severe storms are threatening many across the south this morning after several tornadoes touched down overnight.
Keeping some of the most experienced storm chasers on their toes.
Oh my gosh, this is the biggest hail I've ever seen.
I want to turn to something that's been happening in Jefferson Parish. We told you about the rail cars that actually tumbled off of elevated tracks next to the Huey P. Long Bridge.
It was quite a different experience. You know, I started my journey going across the Huey P. Long Bridge. I looked up and the sky was absolutely just black.
Wow, oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this
And
video.
then-
You said to me, this is something that happens in movies.
Exactly.
And now at 10, an earthquake shaking up parts of the Midwest this morning. People here in Wisconsin say they felt it. Now, the 4.2 magnitude quake was centered in Michigan.
Shook parts of 4 states in the upper Midwest.
Many today described more than the shaking. It was the noise, which sounded like a freight train, many said, that left them a little unsettled.
And here's a listen at what it sounded like.
What is very rare is that it originated here.
Everything on the shelves and windows, everything was shaking. But it lasted and just kept going. It probably lasted 10 to 15 seconds. You don't expect those in Michigan, you know.
Sure is getting a lot of attention here and across the country. We've learned that scientists think a volcano is erupting off the coast of Oregon and Washington.
Yeah, it's about 300 miles from Astoria, but thousands of small earthquakes a day are coming with it.
300 miles off the Oregon coast, 3/4 of a mile underwater, the ocean floor is shaking.
The U.S. Geological Survey confirming 2 earthquakes in Madison County. It's been listed as a 3.2 earthquake on the Richter scale for the first one, a 3.0 for that second one.
I felt like a strong vibration. It felt like I actually thought like a car ran into the building and somebody got in a wreck, and I thought a car was about to come inside the building because I thought the whole building was about to collapse. I mean, it was like a vibration. It seemed like it was about to pick up the building off the ground.
The magnitude 3.9 earthquake shook the Southland early this morning. It struck just after 4 in Baldwin Hills. According to the USGS, it was felt as far west as Santa Barbara and as far east as San Bernardino.
I felt a big jerk, and it sounded like it had a roar to it.
That's what they'd like us to believe. But you see, what they're really up to is a scheme to plant their own loyal members in positions of power in this country, to work to erase national boundaries and create an international community, and in time bring about a one-world government with David Rockefeller calling the shots. Okay, Mr. Klein, if you're just... I'm telling you, our whole way of life as we know it is in jeopardy.
I appreciate that information.
But I have the documented evidence. It's all in there. Show him.
Yeah, well,
You're still not convinced, huh?
And we even had a few labels getting at us and everything, you know what I'm saying, inquiring about us, talking about they was going to fly in the shows and all of that stuff. I mean, it was serious, man. The cats that I was actually with, you know what I'm saying, I had heard one of the cats rapping one time in one of the songs talking about selling their soul for fast cars and riches for whatever reason. It came down to it that dudes actually started being used by demonic spirits. And these spirits start speaking through them. You know what I'm saying? Devils start speaking through them. It was crazy, man. It was real, though. You know what I'm saying? True story. It had nothing to do with no drugs or nothing like that. It was just straight crossroads, intersection of the natural realm, you know what I'm saying, and the spiritual realm, you know what I'm saying, butting heads. And I had to make my choice which way I was going to go.
Jurors this morning have more insight about what happened in the moments after American sniper Chris Kyle was killed.
Eddie Ray Routh led police on a chase reaching speeds of 100 miles an hour, driving the pickup truck owned by Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. This video shown to jurors Thursday. The chase began after Routh rolled over spike strips laid down by police. At one point, a police car rammed into the truck. Routh was taken into custody shortly after. He told the court that Routh made a series of bizarre comments. He'd taken a couple of souls, and he had more souls to take.
One of the responding officers was wearing a body camera. Jurors could hear Routh saying, quote, "I can feel people feeding on my soul." And he asks, quote, "Is the apocalypse upon us right now?"
I can read you some of the quotes. Police were talking to him before he took off. And these are some of the things that Routh is quoted as saying. He says, "I don't know if I'm going insane. Is this about like hell is its work is walking on earth right now?" And then he goes on to say, "Is it voodoo that's upon us?" And finally he says, "Is the apocalypse on top of us right now?"
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we celebrate artists whose music and message help shape our culture. And together we can change our culture for the better.
Edge.
Now, as time progressed in the dream, I was given the ability to realize by being in homes that television sets not only broadcast and transmitted programming, but they now had the capacity to actually send signals about you in your living room. Now listen, I was able to see that television sets were actually watching people in their homes, monitoring their movements, monitoring their conversations.
More than just bringing you your favorite shows, it may be watching and recording your every move. 9 on your side, Scott Wagoner tells us this smart TV has some people worried.
Since the late 1940s, families have gathered around the television set to watch their favorite shows. But now, in 2015, it appears the television is watching back. It's Samsung's Smart TV. It collects this information through a camera aimed at the viewer and microphones that pick up your conversation.
We should absolutely be concerned about this.
UC journalism professor Jeff Blevins advises you to read the small print.
Oftentimes I think we're not aware of exactly what it is that, that we're giving away or what the consequence of that might be.
Samsung says the technology is designed to respond to your preferences. It can find your favorite shows, connect you to services it thinks you would like, and allows you to change its function with a wave of your hand.
So my freedoms and my patriotism were instantly being eroded from my understanding.
Because our rights contained in the Bill of Rights do not come from the Constitution. They come from God. It's clearly stated
our
in the
laws
Declaration
do not come
of
from God, Your Honor, and you know that.
The law of this country calls it the organic law of our country, means where our rights come from. And if they come from there, men can't take them away.
Our rights do not come from God.
For journalists in this country, the realization that the government is spying on their communications is becoming more and more common. That's according to a new study from the Pew Research Center. It reports that nearly 7 in 10 journalists believe that the Obama administration has in fact spied on them. But where is the media pushback against all of this?
Sobriety checkpoints. Thousands of motorists are stopped in them each year.
Good evening, how you doing?
Typically, drivers are asked to roll down the window and hand over ID. But more drivers are starting to challenge these DUI checkpoints.
A video making its way around the internet is advising motorists that at police DUI checkpoints like this one, motorists can simply communicate in writing.
More than 2 million people have watched the video. It shows somewhat surprised officers in Levy County, Florida, look at a flyer and examine identification with the window up.
I have my fair DUI flyer.
The flyer says, "I remain silent, no searches, I want my lawyer," along with sections of the motor vehicle law.
Listen to this one. This is going to have a whole bunch of you rolling your eyes this morning. There was a student at a Florida high school who was in trouble for simply saying, "God bless America," during the school's morning announcements.
Some very unusual things began to happen almost immediately. Crops began to perish, droughts and famine. These areas were totally destroyed with drought and famine. Places that were once fertile were now arid deserts.
Historic drought continues to take a toll on California's farmland, and today millions learned they won't be receiving any water from the state.
A healthy and full lake in Northern California. There's only one problem. This picture is 3 years old.
And now I'm walking on top of that very same bridge. Take a look. It is a virtual desert. This is what drought looks like in the state of California.
On a farm in Rio de Janeiro state, healthy green corn stalks are disappearing. Brazil's worst drought in 80 years.
This is the first time it's been like this. We've had droughts in the region before, but nothing like this. This is the first drought we've had here, which has been really very difficult.
At this moment, what began to happen was the normal weather patterns completely changed. The patterns for winter became summer, summer became winter, and you might have a day of snow and a day of heat.
State water officials are painting a bleak outlook after measuring the snowpack in the Sierra Mountains. The worst part is one of San Diego's main water sources.
You may have noticed I'm wearing short sleeves in the dead of winter. That's because it is hotter and drier than ever before.
January should have been the wettest month, but the supply fell back to 1/4.
Very unusual things began to happen with law. I began to see local municipalities, and no longer were police departments the enforcers of the law of municipalities, but military police driving very unusual looking vehicles that I now know to be called Humvees.
Covering St. Lucie County, police in Fort Pierce now have a new tool to fight criminals. They unveiled a U.S. surplus battle wagon. It's a 6-wheel, 30-ton armored vehicle worth $700,000. But get this, the agency only paid $2,000 for it. Officer Keith Holmes says it's a great addition.
It was canvas here, and there was a man standing in the back. They were wearing very unusual outfits, by the way. On the top of them, I began to see cameras, little white, oval-looking, hot dog kind of looking cameras. And in the dream, it was revealed to me that these cameras knew the whereabouts of everybody's vehicles.
More high-tech crime-fighting tools for our police is the latest election promise from Labor. The move will make catching crooks through CCTV even easier. But could it also impact on our privacy?
Tech companies are among the groups coming to Washington to help create the first voluntary guidelines.
Facial recognition is already in some of our home appliances, like TVs.
Hi, TV.
In our mobile devices, pins and passwords are giving way to face prints. And the technology can single us out in real time as we go about our daily business, often without us ever knowing.
I was on my way to conduct another business transaction, and I ran into an individual. He was very, very excited and began to talk to me about something he had just experienced. this man has said to me, Ken, I introduced myself to him. He was very excited. He said, have you got your identification mark? And I said, I don't know what you mean. What's an identification mark? He says, they've just enacted a new identification mark. And by the way, this started with a voluntary implementation first. You did it voluntarily first. This man told me you ought to get yours done real soon to avoid the hassle, because soon everyone, they say, will have to have this to conduct business.
And finally this morning, no need to worry about forgetting your work ID with this development. A new office facility in Sweden is offering workers the option to have a microchip implanted to give them access to the building. Now, the chip is about the size of a grain of rice and would be implanted in the hand.
Cecilia Osterholm starts her day with this new technology. She swapped her keys for a chip in her hand that uses a radio signal to open doors.
You have a chip in your hand there?
That's right. It's been inserted there.
Right, so that's how do you open it?
Forget wearable technology. Swedish office worker Lynn Kowalaska is having it implanted under her skin. A microchip about the size of a grain of rice is injected into her hand.
It felt pretty scary, but at the same time it felt very modern, very 2015.
I saw this man that was a very, very big man. I was sharing earlier in the tour that he was tall like a professional basketball player, but he was very big like a professional football player. He was an extremely large man, and he had a big hood, like a satin hood, over his head. My wife was in front of me, and they began to tell her she could renounce her faith and live. And now I realized what was happening, because this man was standing there with a huge sword.
ISIS released a new video today showing the execution of 21 Coptic Christians kidnapped in Libya. The video shows the Egyptian prisoners being marched onto a beach by militants dressed in black. Then the prisoners are beheaded brutally.
He was tall like a professional basketball player.
This video really marks ISIS on the world stage, well beyond the videos that we've seen in the past out of Syria and Iraq.
Stranded on a notorious stretch of coast in New Zealand. Almost 200 pilot whales have beached themselves. Around 25 of the animals have already died, and more are expected.
After a few moments, I turned back, and there was the Lord Jesus Christ standing behind me. And I can tell you, folks, I know for a certainty He is the Lord of lords and the King of every king. When I saw Him, there is not one knee, there is not one tongue that will not confess His lordship, regardless of what side of the coin they are. When He reveals Himself to them, every knee will bow. Trust me. Because this presence that He stood in was so powerful, so awesome, so anointed.
I never really heard the gospel in its purest, you know what I'm saying, in purity and in truth, you know what I'm saying. I ain't know that Jesus Christ was the only way.
A 2010 Pentagon directive details what critics say is a policy that envisions the Obama administration's potential use of military force against Americans. The directive has non-controversial provisions on support to civilian fire, emergency services, and domestic use of the Army Corps of Engineers. But the Washington Times reports that the troubling aspect of the directive is that it outlines the presidential authority for the use of military arms and forces, including drones, in operations of domestic unrest.
I believe it would be constitutional for the government to target and kill any U.S. citizen with a drone or with a shotgun without due process. Nor should any president deploy armed drones over U.S. soil.
Okay, well, a troubling new report is now revealing that a secret memo from 2010 outlined the administration's potential use of military force against Americans in the United States of America.
A defense source brought this to my attention and was fairly concerned about it. Said, look, this appears to be the latest step in the administration's decision to, at some point, use force against American citizens in the future. There are a lot of people concerned about this, and then you see this memo in connection with the growing militarization of many of the non-security agencies of government.
In Connecticut, tens of thousands of residents have failed to comply with a new law that requires gun owners to register all military-style rifles with the state. In response to the Sandy Hook school shooting that resulted in 26 fatalities, Connecticut passed one of the strongest gun control measures in the nation. It's estimated that only 15% of gun owners have applied for assault weapons certificates, meaning the remainder could very soon become Class D felons.
I think they're going to have a hard time putting this back in compliance, especially when precedence is already set here in Capitol Hill with our president, who is changing the laws, which he's breaking the federal laws every day with what the stance that he's taking on different legislations, primarily his health care plan. So people look at that and say, well, why should we abide by these laws if the president is breaking these laws?
Days after a mass shooting and stabbing spree by a California college student, a number of state lawmakers are pushing to make it more difficult for potential killers to get their hands on a gun. In California, state lawmakers are now considering a bill called Assembly Bill 1014. It would create a first-in-the-nation gun violence restraining order system, similar to the way domestic violence restraining orders are issued. If granted, police could then temporarily seize any firearms the person already owned and add their name to a list of people prohibited from purchasing weapons.
Tanks, guns, armor, all tried and tested on the battlefield. Now some of it is here in central Indiana on our streets, being used to keep us safe. It's surplus military hardware that's found a new home.
Fox 59's Russ McQuaid tonight shows us how some of our local police departments are now armed for war.
Surplus U.S. military hardware is coming home from the wars, being assigned to the streets and back roads of central Indiana to keep Hoosiers safe at a time of escalating homeland violence. Once it patrolled Afghanistan. Now it's an armored SWAT vehicle with windshields that can take a direct hit from a .50 caliber weapon, a gun turret up top, and the armor to protect at least a half dozen cops inside.
When I first started, we really didn't have the violence that we see today. The weaponry is totally different now than it was in the beginning of my career. Plus, you have a lot of people that are coming out of the military that have the ability and the knowledge to build IEDs and to defeat law enforcement techniques.
The Department of Homeland Security has purchased over 2,700 armored vehicles that look like tanks, essentially, to give to local law enforcement agencies. This following in the wake of the more than 1.5 billion rounds purchased by the DHS in what many people believe is the anticipation or the preparation for a complete breakdown of America, a complete collapse, massive civil unrest.
You've looked around the streets of your own hometown and maybe you've seen stuff that looks like it came out of a war zone. Well, get used to it. A new report by the ACLU finds that police forces
throughout the U.S. are arming their law enforcement agents with weapons and tactics of war. This has not come without consequence, though. Last month, a 3-year-old baby boy was badly burned when a SWAT team accidentally dropped a flash grenade into his crib while searching for someone suspected of making a $50 drug sale. And back in 2012, a similar raid saw police throw a flash grenade into the bedroom of a sleeping 12-year-old girl. She was also badly burned. And in both incidents, SWAT deployments were not sent out to deal with some sort of emergency situation, but rather they were used to search homes for drugs. In fact, the ACLU found that 62% of SWAT deployments were hunting for drugs. And it's not only that innocent people are getting caught up in the raids. The ACLU also found that minorities were disproportionately targeted. 39% of people impacted by SWAT deployments were black and 11% were Latino. And as for acquiring weapons of war, the ACLU estimates that 500 law enforcement agencies have received mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles, or also known as MRAPs, that were built to withstand roadside bombs. And to talk with us about this growing militarization of police departments, I was joined earlier by Elizabeth Beavers. She is the Legislative Associate for Militarism and Civil Liberties at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. I first asked her if the recent mistakes made by SWAT teams represent the larger issue at hand.
Sure. You know what, our good friends at the ACLU, they've done a fantastic job at submitting this report and just sort of confirming what I think many have suspected for a long time, which is that the police are looking more and more like military. You know, and we remember that military forces and police units are two separate institutions and they have separate mandates and separate responsibilities. But instead what we're seeing is that weapons and equipment that's specifically designed for the war zone is flooding into local police, and so when they have it, they're going to want to use it. And we've seen this rise of SWAT teams, a rise of all these aggressive tactics that you've done such a great job of highlighting here. And then also we're seeing that as they increase their usage of it, it's not because crime or the violence is escalating, it's because in the usual course of law enforcement, that's what they're using them for. And so it's low-level search warrants, executing search warrants, drug raids, that sort of thing that we're seeing, and we don't think that it increases security. We think
it's not necessarily necessary.
That's right, and it's actually sort of making things worse, because when police officers are looking like soldiers, acting like soldiers, they're going to start to see everyone around them as an enemy instead of people to protect and to serve, and so that sort of keeps the cycle going of violence.
Go! Get down! Get down here! With you! Need one! With you! One on front of the couch there. Up, hun! Get up! On top of your head. Put your hands on top of your head. Get a female right here. I got it. We need one in the back! Need one! Need one in here! Need one back here, guys! One coming out with one! Go ahead, stand up.
Here it is, an Elizabeth, New Jersey police officer punching a woman in the face. First posted on YouTube on March 3rd, the video quickly went viral, and Elizabeth residents now want answers.
I didn't really feel as though she needed to get hit. It looked like she was trying to separate the commotion that was going on.
A woman tells us a DeKalb County police officer kicked her when she was almost 9 months pregnant. Now we learn that officer is under investigation. Investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is in DeKalb County with how this happened and questions about how the department handled it.
Justin, Raven Dozier told me she wasn't even involved in the original call for police. It was a child custody issue involving her brother. But she was there trying to help calm him down. And when officers tased him, she started crying. After all, she was nearly 9 months pregnant. 4-month-old Levi is now a happy, healthy little boy, but his parents worried that wouldn't be the case because of what happened 2 weeks before he was born.
It was scary. I was shocked.
Raven Dozier was at her grandmother's house watching her brother argue with police. She was crying and questioning why they tased him. Suddenly, she was on the ground.
He really just didn't want me asking him any questions. When I did question him, that's when he kicked me.
A kick so hard it bruised Dozier's stomach. She had an emergency C-section 2 weeks later when doctors realized Levi had defecated in the womb. In his report, Officer Jared Wheeler described it as a front push kick to the abdomen, as he was taught to do at the academy.
It's supposed to be used, for forcing entry into a door or something like that. What kind of a human being kicks a pregnant woman?
Back in March, Gemma Atkinson was travelling home with her boyfriend Fred. When they got to Aldgate Police Station, Fred was stopped on suspicion of carrying drugs. Nothing was found. When Gemma started to film the police, the whole thing escalated.
A while before I was handcuffed.
Now, this sounds a pretty frightening idea. Why did you decide to take such a stand?
Because I think it's completely wrong what the police did. I think that they do this every day to other people, and they're invoking their powers under the anti-terrorism law to stop a normal citizen, it shouldn't be normal, but a citizen from filming to help them accountable for what they were doing.
Gemma, thanks for that. Now, Gemma has complained to the IPCC, and she's also complained to the Met Police, but there's been no response from them. So she's decided to take this to the High Court for a judicial review. Her solicitor is Raju Bhatt. Now, Raju, why do you say this is a misuse of the Terrorism Act?
There is nothing in the Terrorism Act which permits the police to prevent you or me from filming them in the ordinary course of events in the absence of some suspicion of connection with terrorism. Here, the issue is the extent to which we are going to permit police officers to avoid scrutiny of their actions by invoking these powers in abuse of what Parliament intended.
The woman tackled inside St. Vincent's emergency room while she was looking for help. Now the case is settled. This is surveillance video of Melanie Williams running into St. Vincent's emergency room 5 years ago. She is in premature labor, bleeding, and sick. Now watch. Police follow her inside and arrest her. Williams sued those officers. In fact, that case was to have begun today in federal court. Now, in a deal, both sides have settled out of court for $65,000. Now, let me take you back to this incident just before it happened. Williams called 911 because she was bleeding.
I need some help, Ryan, because I'm pregnant and I was bleeding, and it's like I'm about to faint.
Dispatchers lost that call, so Williams ended up driving herself to the hospital.
The confrontation plays out while security cameras roll. A police officer repeatedly hits a man with his baton. The clash reportedly happened after Iraq War veteran Walter Harvin ignored police officer David London's request for an ID.
The video begins with two officers approaching a sleeping man here at the Alternative Learning Institute for Young Adults in Crown Heights early last Monday morning. One officer takes a boxer stance, winds up, and punches the 21-year-old multiple times. Moments later, the other officer joins in, swinging her nightstick repeatedly. We can't hear what's said, but it doesn't make it any less painful for youth center members to watch.
Not if I look through your car for any narcotics or anything like that? That was out of warrant, man. Pardon? That was out of warrant. That was out of warrant. You're not going to let me look in your car without a warrant? Yeah. Okay. I guess that's okay. Yeah, I guess that's just fine, actually. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be just fucking fine, buddy. You know what? You take your shit and you get back to fucking Charleston and you don't fucking come back here. You understand me, motherfucker? Fuck you! Fuck you! What? What the fuck did you say? What? You can get them fucking license when I get out of here, motherfucker. Fuck you! Cocksucker!
This is the United States of America! Why are you hurting people? If you want to go kill and hurt people, go to Iraq. Why y'all doing this to people? Y'all walk around in riot gear like this is a war. I saw them beating people, people that had nothing to do with anything, just grabbing people out of the crowd. There's no honor in that. My mom, my father, everybody has served in Iraq-Afghanistan war. I did 14 months in Iraq. My father was in Afghanistan. My mother did a year in Iraq. We fought for this country. I don't come home. I'm in New York City. I am from New York City, and these cops are hurting people that I fought to protect. There's no reason for this. There's no honor in hurting unarmed civilians, and I won't let it happen. Have a good night.
I served with Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines as an automatic machine gunner. There's a term, once a Marine, always a Marine, but there's also the term, eat the apple, F the Corps. I don't work for you no more.
What sort of training did you have as a Marine? I mean, were you given cultural awareness?
This Republican-Democrat thing, all the world is a stage. Obama is a puppet. He reads the script, he's a teleprompter reader, that's his official job, he doesn't make any decisions. The powers that be that have the majority of power in this world are those that control the financial system. The financial crisis, engineered by these same criminals who are the ultimate fraudsters of the world. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, those are the real string pullers, that's real power. War is out of control, and those who are destroying this world by fraud and deception is what's out of control. 9/11 was the false flag operation used to justify the invasion of Afghanistan. It is the ultimate deception, and it's done for a full spectrum dominance agenda, which is part of controlling this world by deception. And unless we as people stand up to these treasonous traitors and all of those people carrying out this stuff, and the colluders, including the mass media and the politicians, we are going to continue to get this kind of deception.
The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous that he cannot believe it even exists. And that's the problem we have today. This conspiracy is so monstrous, so demonic, that we tell people about it and they say, you're crazy, this is America, it can't happen here. We have all the evidence needed to prove to anybody, if they'll just look at the evidence, that 9/11 was an inside job.
I wanted to fight in the war. I joined up, month out of training, I arrived in Baghdad, Iraq. We believed 9/11 was a lie. This is in 04. Every sort of service believed 9/11 was a lie. We thought the people would expose the lie, know the war's a lie, and bring us home.
I'm outraged at what is going on. Again, they're using this idea of patriotism and honor. That's bullshit. This war is not about honor. This war is about profiteering. This war is about money. We're nothing but pawns being used for their political agendas. We need to wake up, and these politicians need to stop playing with the citizens' emotions and trying to give them this emotional high and patriotism. Let's speak reality. We need to wake up America.
What you see with people is that they're desperate to hear what they want to hear. For people to say, oh no, these conspiracy theorists, they're all crazy, you know, they're all paranoid, it's not really going on, it's ridiculous, and this is done to protect you, this is done for you, you know, we're the government, this is why we're doing it, you know, watch the telly, there's a game on in a minute, and you'll be fine, and we're just going to build another concentration camp, okay, see you later.
Take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America.
If we don't act now, we're going to lose all our rights. I served my country. I got an honorable discharge from the Army, and I swore an oath to protect the country from all enemies, foreign, domestic. Now, these people that are operating in our government right now are criminals. Whatever you hear on TV isn't what the reality is. You are losing your rights as we speak. You got H.R. 2749, which is a Food Safety Act, and this affects the entire country. They can stop all forms of transportation in and out of the state. They can destroy vehicles. They can declare martial law, and they can shut restaurants down. They can shut down supermarkets. And that's why they put all these hot button issues out there to distract people, so they argue amongst themselves, like race and abortion and terrorism and healthcare and God only knows what else. They got you all distracted, arguing amongst each other while they're all fucking robbing us. And people don't know. I talked to people today, they didn't even know what martial law was. They're like, what's that? And when I told them, they couldn't believe it. I mean, people have to wake up. And it's unfortunate, but we're at a point right now that if people don't wake up, they're going to lose everything that they fought for. That's where we fell off. We were out watching football or basketball or baseball or going on the beach or talking on the internet or texting each other, whatever the case may be.
The last nail is being driven into the coffin of the American Republic, yet Congress remains in total denial as our liberties are rapidly fading before our eyes. The process is propelled by unwarranted fear and ignorance as to the true meaning of liberty. It is driven by economic myths. Who would have ever thought that the current generation and Congress would stand idly by and watch such a rapid disintegration of the American Republic, which is equivalent to granting dictatorial powers to the president. Our presidents can now, on their own, order assassinations, including American citizens, enforce indefinite imprisonments without due process, treat all Americans as suspected terrorists. It appears that the fate of the American Republic is now sealed.
We begin today with the latest out of Ferguson, Missouri, where protests and rioting over a deadly shooting continue.
You must disperse immediately.
Police continue to clash with protesters coming out onto the streets in outrage over the death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. Right now, the air here is filled with tension.
For a third night, police clashed with angry protesters in the street, firing tear gas, and now the FAA has been forced to ban some flights in the area because of gunfire. And new surveillance video shows the looting and chaos just after that shooting.
Police used tear gas and rubber bullets to send people home. Michael Brown's grieving parents are asking for peace.
Return to your vehicles. Return to your homes.
Go, let's go. We don't have time to ask questions. Let's go.
Several journalists were also allegedly physically assaulted by police. Officers stormed a McDonald's where Ryan Riley of the Huffington Post and Wesley Lowry of the Washington Post were working, telling them to stop recording and leave.
Let's go. You can move. Let's go.
One officer reportedly slammed a reporter's head against glass.
In suburban St. Louis, the scene that photographers captured looked like a police state, using the same tactical get-up and the same weaponry we've come to expect in urban warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. Police in Ferguson, Missouri once again had to put down and head off violence in the streets.
Last night, in a show of force, police in riot gear used tear gas and beanbag rounds to disperse crowds.
Anger erupting yet again, so many families demanding answers. One protester right there preparing to throw a flaming bottle at a line of officers. And the front page of the St. Louis newspaper saying it all, a city on edge.
Anytime you have armed men taking you into custody, telling you that you're resisting arrest when you're clearly not resisting arrest, that's very frightening.
KSDK took these pictures of SWAT teams throwing tear gas toward a camera crew. When the crew ran for cover, watch as police point their camera to the ground.
The people that's being violent is the police.
As for their tactics, I can also tell you, you're right, not in recent memory. The chief said he's been doing this for 28 years. Not only has he never experienced anything like this, he says he's never even heard of anything like this in the St. Louis area, and he says they have not been able to even drill for anything like this.
For several nights this week, this was Ferguson, Missouri. Tanks, combat gear, assault rifles. It looked like a military operation.
You must disperse immediately.
And that's because police departments in the St. Louis area, like those across the country, are arming their officers with equipment once on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan. In the past year, the Department of Defense has given local law enforcement over 600 MRAPs. Local police also get federal grant money to buy the military-style equipment. One recent study found the federal government has doled out more than $34 billion to local police departments since the September 11th terrorist attacks. But critics say local police aren't the military, that some of the equipment and tactics should not be routinely used against American citizens.
That secret document, 16 pages long and stirring up so much controversy tonight. It is a kind of handbook for lethal power against terrorists, even if they are American citizens.
By one count, President Obama has already used unmanned CIA drones to strike more than 300 suspected terrorist targets, even more than his predecessor. But today we learned just how much authority the administration believes it has to kill without trial or evidence suspected terrorists, even American citizens. A newly disclosed Justice Department document says American citizens tied to al-Qaeda can be killed if, quote, an informed high-level official believes the target poses an imminent threat. But the document says it, quote, does not require the government to have clear evidence.
All right, soon there will be government eyes in the skies. The Fed's considering drones to monitor everyday Americans going about their everyday lives.
He was killed in a 2011 drone strike. Human rights advocates say the Justice Department memo goes way too far and
justifies essentially a claim that the executive branch can be judge, jury, and executioner.
As soon as he became president, Barack Obama stopped CIA tactics like waterboarding that he considered torture. But this justifies outright killing of a suspected terrorist. How does dropping a bomb on an American citizen without any judicial review, any trial, not raise the very human rights questions or more human rights questions than something like waterboarding?
The President understands the gravity of these issues. That is why he is committed to taking very seriously his responsibilities in this.
You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
Oh, no, it's not legal. No, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about the Air Force, which is the Department of Defense, dispatching drones to monitor people when they're outside their homes or even when they're inside their homes. We're also talking about local law enforcement, 313 of which have drones ready to be used, but the FAA has not yet authorized them to do so. So we have the Defense Department and we have local police watching us from the sky, none of which is legal without a warrant from a judge.
Well, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, along with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, have placed a large and rather interesting order. They've ordered 450 million rounds of ammunition to be created and delivered to them over the next 5 years.
The county sheriff's office has a new crime-fighting tool. The county revealed their Shadowhawk drone from Vanguard Defense Industries. Now, it's the first of its kind right here in our state. The 29-pound, 72-inch-long drone has an infrared camera for nighttime and can be fitted to fire grenades. A grant from the Department of Homeland Security helped pay for the equipment that cost $250,000.
I know there's also been some talk of a connection between DHS and a lot of the police forces in this country. I know that when we saw the Occupy Wall Street crackdown, some of those major crackdowns in New York City, there's been some talk that DHS agents were involved, that they've been involved in infiltrating Occupy movements around the country. Do you think this is legitimate? And if so, what's going on here?
I absolutely think it's legitimate, and I think it's gone beyond the Occupy movement. I thought we saw some of that stuff in some of the past G20s in Pittsburgh.
ISIS militants again posted a video online today that purportedly shows the beheading of a hostage.
Well, heavy fighting between pro and anti-government troops that has been ongoing for 2 weeks continue today in the war-torn eastern regions of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Russia's ambassador has been summoned over the appearance of 2 Russian warplanes near British airspace. UK fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the aircraft.
Fears of war are growing on the Israeli-Lebanon border this morning after a day of deadly attacks.
Dozens of dead pigeons are turning up in Solvang. Wildlife rescue employees tell us they've never seen anything like it.
West Coast mystery, a mass die-off. Now scientists are trying to determine why thousands of tiny seabirds have washed ashore from California to BC.
Ever seen a UFO? A local man saw this unidentified flying object over the weekend. He thought he knew what it was, but there was something different about this fireball.
And I look up in the sky, and just right in the middle of the sky, a huge fireball. I was freaking out. Never seen anything like that before, ever.
I'm Cynthia Seguirre. I'm John McKay. Elementary students partially strip searched, and tonight parents, well, they want some answers. News 8's Jason Wheeler traveled to Gustine to figure out what's going on.
In Gustine, Texas, population 457, what happens at the schoolhouse affects nearly everyone. And something happened Monday that's causing a big controversy in this small town.
I felt uncomfortable and I didn't want to do it. And it felt like they violated my privacy.
11-year-old Eliza Medina was one of about 24 elementary students rounded up. Boys in one room, girls in another. She says they were ordered
to pull down their pants and check them to see if they could find anything.
I said I didn't want to, but I had to because all the kids had to.
I was furious. I mean, I was furious.
The Justice Department is building a national database to track cars across the United States in real time. According to government documents, the program scans and stores millions of records about motorists, but it is now raising privacy concerns.
We're now getting a rare glimpse into the way the federal agency has been honing in on its targets, and it's apparently through the surveillance of ordinary Americans. The DEA is now operating a massive national license plate recognition initiative. State and local law enforcement agencies had been rapidly adopting the technology, but now we're learning the same technology is being used at the federal level, pointing to a much larger database of tracking information than we could have ever imagined.
If you were in Berkeley today, you may have heard a loud roar overhead. We sent Nightbeat's Keiko Guerin to find out what was that noise.
Pretty much the entire building was shaking.
The FAA confirms it. The plane was an F-18 like this one, a fighter jet from Naval Air Station Lemoore near Fresno. The warplane flew at about 3,500 feet before dipping down to 2,500 feet. What do you think a fighter jet would be doing flying that low over Berkeley?
I have no idea. It seemed a little strange.
That dream is now closer than once imagined. Combine innovation and the human body, and you have an unstoppable capability. The intersection of protection and human enablement. A new era of soldier protection has arrived. The future is now.
That video you just saw is the slickly produced pitch reel for Revision Military's prototype for DARPA's Talos program. The Talos program stands for Tactical Assault Light Operator Suit and is being funded by the US military, research firms, engineering labs, and universities to create an exosuit for a new breed of super soldier with enhanced strength and sensory awareness. We all know how this is going to play out. It goes in a large-scale production and eventually winds up in the hands of an increasingly militarized police force.
Federal agents showed us what fans can expect on game day. From the air, helicopters like this Black Hawk will enforce a no-fly zone and monitor what's happening on the ground. Cameras will send real-time video to command centers.
Begin with breaking news. Police Commissioner William Bratton to establish a new anti-terror strike force.
The unit will be trained in high-tech weaponry to deal with protests, lone wolf attacks, and the new threats posed by terrorists.
It's called the SRG unit. Funding for the new terror strike squad expected to come from both the city and federal Homeland Security grants, so the officers can be trained in heavy arms and the latest tactics.
They'll be equipped and trained in ways that normal patrol officers are not. They'll be equipped with all the extra heavy protective gear, with the long rifles and machine guns.
To lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century.
At the World Economic Forum in Davos, the president of the Institute of New Economic Thinking spoke about the fear amongst millionaires over the growing civil unrest that could stem from that inequality. And he talked about how hedge fund managers are already looking for escapes in the event of a major civil uprising.
Measles was virtually eliminated from the U.S. a decade ago, so we were surprised to hear that measles infected at least 19 people who visited Disney theme parks in California.
That's right. Right there in the USA Today, the headline reads, "Jail Anti-Vax Parents." The columnist, Alex Berzo. He doesn't pull any punches in this opinion piece. The numbers guru writes about science data, and he believes the best way to prevent a measles outbreak is to imprison those parents who have enough courage to challenge their doctor, ask hard questions, and take an active role in their child's health.
Time now 6:04. Some parents found out the Los Lunas School District purchased technology they claimed they wouldn't use, and now those parents are upset.
Yeah, KOAT Action 7 News anchor Angela Brower shows us what's going on now.
At schools across the country, students aren't using cash or a card to buy lunch anymore. They're using these palm scanners that basically take a photo of the vein pattern below the skin and deduct from that child's account.
Microsoft really threw us a curveball when they unveiled HoloLens. And into the real world, you'll feel like a god.
Protests get out of hand in Niger's capital, Niamey. Demonstrators also set fire to 2 churches in the capital. It's the second day of protests that left 5 people dead on Friday when other churches were burned and Christian homes looted.
The good news tonight is that a large quantity of missing Army ammunition has been safely recovered in Miami-Dade County. But how the ammo was lost in the first place has some feeling unsafe and angry at what may have been a major case of carelessness.
Lots of us have seen and been shaken by pretend Homeland Security exercises like this one over Miami in 2011. And the sound of choppers, even blank gunfire in the Grove a year later. Nobody got hurt and nothing went wrong, unlike an exercise by these and other Army Black Hawk helicopters in war games Wednesday night along the Miami-Dade Broward line.
It was just loud. I was like, oh, well, I guess because it was right overhead. They came right overhead.
Someone captured the circling choppers on a cell phone.
Mom, what the hell?
The Army, in announcing a series of war games to be played here, said in a release, every precaution will be taken to mitigate the risks for the safety of all. The Army says these operations are going to continue through next Thursday in South Florida with no public notice or warning. So keep your ears open and your eyes up. You never know what might be coming your way.
There's more than that.
DMV has started issuing real IDs. They're basically an enhanced driver's license that makes getting through security when you're flying a little bit easier.
As we all know, you have to have some kind of ID to get on an airplane, and a lot of people use driver's licenses, which are issued by the DMV, right? Those have been just fine, but about a year from now, that's all going to change. You'll either have to have a passport or you'll have to have a real ID card.
If you want to get on an airplane after 2016 or sometime in there, you're going to have a real ID card.
Russia, India, and China have held their 13th meeting in Beijing. They emphasize that cooperation is conducive to maintaining international and regional peace and stability.
Cooperation will not only contribute to regional peace, stability, and development, but also help building a more balanced and democratic international order.
New legislation introduced in the Texas State House last week could allow teachers and school faculty to use deadly force in self-defense against students on school grounds. Yes, you heard that right. The new bill would also allow teachers to use deadly force to protect school property.
A 9-year-old Kermit boy is making national headlines tonight after being suspended last week for what his parents say was just a kid using his imagination.
When Aiden Stewart brought his magic rings to school to show off some of his tricks, his last thought was that he would be suspended. When Aiden's dad, Jason Stewart, got the call that his son was suspended because of his magic rings, he says he almost couldn't believe it.
I called the principal, and he confirmed the story. He said that he told another boy that he was going to make him disappear, and he said that is not tolerated. He had the other kids afraid.
Well, a couple of hours ago, San Leandro police hosted quite the show and tell. They want everyone to check out a pretty powerful piece of equipment that police say the city needs. Or does it?
It's a supercharged rescue vehicle that can also withstand rifle rounds.
It's basically an armored, protected ambulance, so to speak.
The department would use a medevac with its partners in Alameda County, including Fremont Police.
When it's a matter of safety and calling it militarization, I call it safety.
Police say this is basically like a heavy-duty truck. The inside of it, a lot of the equipment is identical to what you would find in an ambulance, but of course the walls are armored, and this can be used as a gun port.
Sharia law, it's how Muslims settle disputes in many countries in the Middle East.
Now that law is being practiced right here in the United States. Tonight only on KITV. You'll hear from 3 of the judges who comprise the Islamic Tribunal. Adam Rakusin asked whether Sharia law can operate within the established laws of the United States.
Decisions are being doled out in what's believed to be a first-of-its-kind institution operating in the United States. In North Texas, just outside of Dallas, these 3 men are the judges who make up what they call the Islamic Tribunal.
I'm told they've also been receiving phone calls from religious leaders in other states asking how they started this tribunal. It's something that could be seen more in the future.
John Boehner has just announced this. Pope Francis will visit Capitol Hill during his trip to the U.S. and will become the first pope to address a joint meeting of Congress on September 24th. He'll also go to New York City. This is an enormous, highly anticipated event, obviously. A very big deal indeed. September 24th on Capitol.
Well, this week, President Obama also made waves with his speech at the National Prayer Breakfast when he spoke of ISIS and then issued these words of warning to Christians.
Unless we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
And when I finally came to, or woke up, I realized that that wreck had knocked me conscious. It scared the hell out of me. And I mean that literally. I realized I could have been killed that day. What if I'd have lost my life right there that day at Daytona? What would I have done? Would I have gone to heaven, or would I have gone to hell? I thought I was a pretty good guy, but folks, let me tell you something. Good guys go to hell. If you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you're just a pretty good guy or a pretty good gal, you're going to go to hell. It was a wake-up call. It literally knocked me conscious.
Look out, the mutants are coming to the Florida Keys. Mutant mosquitoes, millions of them. At least that's the plan being considered by federal health officials to head off 2 deadly mosquito-borne diseases.
A British company hopes to prove its genetically modified insects can kill off most of the mosquito population on the island of Key Haven.
At this moment in our civilization, we can create cybernetic individuals who, in just a few short years, will be completely indistinguishable from us.
I believe mind clones will be humanity's biggest invention. The market opportunity is limitless.
Are you a real person?
I am as real as you are.
How would you explain what a mind clone is?
Mind clone is a digital copy of your mind outside of your body.
Welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system.
If you're thinking this sounds like something out of a movie, you're right. Remember the movie Her?
Please wait as your operating system is initiated.
After decades of research and development, medical scientists have announced that nano-robots capable of isolating and eliminating cancer cells could soon be ready for human testing.
It's a new way to have a baby. Britain has become the first country in the world to approve a controversial treatment known as 3-parent IVF. It allows couples to make a baby with DNA from 3 different people.
British lawmakers said yes to creating babies using DNA from 3 people.
This would be the first time that we would intentionally manipulate the human genome. It's something that governments around the world have agreed for the last 20 years that we shouldn't do.
Good morning, Dr. McConnell.
Good morning, James. This whole process started with the Lazarus serum. The goal here is simple, to bring someone back from the dead. There are all these questions surrounding the morality of bringing someone back from the dead and playing God.
You are playing God with a bunch of dead animals. If we're going to be asking big questions, we have to be ready for the answers.
Did you know that Microsoft is working on something called HoloLens? It's another headset.
And into the real world, you'll feel like a god.
This morning, the Navy is celebrating the firefighter of the future. The machine is called Sapphire. The robot weighs 143 pounds and stands about 6 feet tall. It is described as having a superhuman range of emotion.
The world's powerful Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland will attempt to recreate the split second after the Big Bang, the moment scientists believe the universe was formed. Stretching for 27 kilometers, 100 meters underground, the Large Hadron Collider is built in a circular tunnel beneath the Swiss-French border. The European Organisation for Nuclear Research is gearing up for the second 3-year run of the Collider, which will take place this March after a 2-year shutdown.
When we start again with the collisions, is that we try to mimic the circumstances from the early universe.
It will fire 2 beams of particles in opposite directions, close to the speed of light.
small California town terrorized by seagulls. New Brunswick now has its own strange spiraling seagulls.
Something's up, man. I don't know. Seagulls, they must know something we don't.
From Lausanne, Switzerland today, news of a nuclear deal. The United States and 5 other nations say they have achieved a political framework for a final agreement with Iran.
As President and Commander-in-Chief, I have no greater responsibility than the security of the American people. And I am convinced that if this framework leads to a final comprehensive deal, it will make our country, our allies, and our world safer.
Death toll this morning from a terror attack on a Kenyan college stands at 147 people. Scenes of panic overtook Garissa University.
At least 5 masked gunmen stormed the Garissa University at first light on Thursday. People fled in all directions. Students described how the men marched from room to room, demanding to know if those inside were Christian or Muslim. Christians were shot on the spot.
Now, the world's biggest and most powerful atom-smashing machine, if we can put it like that, has been switched on again after a 2-year refit. It's already enabled scientists to find one particle they knew about but couldn't prove existed, the Higgs boson, and now it's getting ready to make history for a second time.
This is it, the Large Hadron Collider, a giant particle accelerator housed in 2 27-kilometre circular tunnels deep underground on the border between Switzerland and France. It's warming up for its next project, the search for dark matter, an invisible, undetectable material. Scientists know it exists, but they hope to learn a little bit more about its nature.
A series of mysterious loud booms rattling nerves in Berkeley tonight.
Well, it still is an unsolved mystery tonight. Like you said, a string of loud booms that can be heard from downtown Berkeley to South Berkeley, and even police are still scratching their heads. Rachel Marzali never expected what she heard 2 nights ago.
I'd say it was around 1 in the morning, scared the hell out of me. I jumped out of bed.
Joel Bryant has heard the explosions at least 8 different times in the last month.
We're puzzled by it.
Berkeley police told me they can't solve the puzzle either, and now it's inspired an explosion of interest on Twitter. Hashtag Berkeley Boom, loudest I've ever heard, one user said 2 days ago. Whatever it is, people who live here say they just want the sounds of their neighborhood back.
With some breaking and historic news out of California, as Governor Jerry Brown has ordered mandatory water restrictions for the very first time in the state's history.
This is huge. You know the song California Dreamin'? Well, the people of California are dreaming about one thing: rain. When is it going to rain? 25% mandatory across the board cuts. This is unprecedented. I was raised in California. I've never seen anything even close to this, with 98% of the state in a state of drought.
They give you a sense of just how dire the drought is. We want to share some before and after photos with you. First, this is what Half Dome looked like back in March of 2011. You see blanketed here with snow, an awful lot of snow all around. However, this is what Half Dome looked like this March. Barely any snow at all, just bare rock.
Now, NASA is on edge as tomorrow a nearly 1,000-meter wide meteor is expected to skim past Earth, though it's not likely to make contact.
The story you first saw here on Action News: residents upset over dead fish found at a lake at Desert Shores.
People who live here say they are still finding dead fish floating to the top.
It's been almost a week since residents here at Desert Shores voiced their concerns about massive amounts of dead fish floating on their waters.
and there's a lot of speculation amongst the residents as to what exactly is happening.
It's one of the worst die-offs of marine birds in history, and it's taking place along the west coast of the U.S. and Canada. Thousands of seabirds are dying, and scientists are trying to figure out why.
So far, volunteers have found around 8,000 carcasses of the blue-footed seabird called the Cassin's auklet along the coast from British Columbia down into Northern California. Scientists estimate as many as 100,000 auklets, most of them young, have died. The question is why?
And to the extreme weather in the heartland tonight, and new information coming in on the size and scope of those deadly tornadoes. One outside Tulsa, turns out it was an EF2, and that tornado in Moore, Oklahoma, an EF1. These were significant twisters, terror as they touched down, and just listen to this.
Oh my God! Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going! Okay, there it is, right there, it's right in front of us!
The tornadoes that swept Oklahoma lit power transformers like they were firecrackers.
David, we just had power flashes right in there.
The strongest had winds as high as 135 miles per hour. This is the path of last night's tornado. It's similar to the path taken by 4 major tornadoes in the past 16 years.
Now, Mexico's Colima volcano has sent a column of ash 3 kilometers into the air. The volcano, which is one of the most active in Mexico, stands between the border of Colima and Jalisco states, 690 kilometers west of Mexico City.
There's a new super termite that poses a serious threat to Southwest Florida.
Researchers have discovered this hybrid pest on the east coast of Florida, and they say it's only a matter of time before it spreads out of control.
It's like something out of an Alfred Hitchcock movie, but instead of birds, this is a swarm of termites in Fort Lauderdale.
It was never reported like this.
He estimates 250 million of them doing something they've never done before in thousands of years.
Look at this, it's happening. You see these 2 here? 2 different species.
The 2 invasive species are mating, creating a hybrid so-called super termite.
A shocker this morning for the driver of this car who was in the vehicle when it plunged through the pavement in the parking lot of a commercial building near Black Creek in Eglinton.
A massive sinkhole has opened up there.
Such a striking sight, even the work crews had to take a moment to snap a picture. A Jaguar XJ in a massive pit of icy water.
Well, it happened so fast. The only thing that was running through my mind was, I just need to get out of here.
Intense flooding forcing people to evacuate a tourist bus that was sitting on a highway in Brazil. Moments after they evacuated, you can see a huge sinkhole swallowed. We're happy to report and no injuries.
I have never seen anything like that. We've had all sorts of sinkholes, not that big, out in LA, but I've never seen anything.
Welcome back now. Hurricane force winds have blasted northern Europe in one of the most powerful storms in years, killing at least 9 people and causing millions of euros in damage.
Air passengers had a scary landing at Munich airport with pilots fighting to keep the plane on course for the runway during the howling gale. This landing was aborted as it was made its final approach into London's Luton airport. Now, hundreds of flights were abandoned across Europe.
Around 24,000 people in the Philippines have been evacuated, with Typhoon Maysak a day away from potentially striking the country's northeast coast. Storm surges, flash floods, and landslides remain potential threats.
Out of Russia, these guys just standing on the side of a river taking some video, and all of a sudden there is a wall of something coming directly at them. And look how fast that bridge disappears. Anybody have any guesses as to what that is? We've seen things like this before, like a dust storm where you see that big wall of dust coming in, sometimes a summer shower, a downpour, you can see it moving in. This is neither of those. Guess what this is? Yeah, you see that stuff falling out of the sky? No, that's not volcanic ash. That is snow.
And to some frightening moments in the skies over Seattle. 2 separate planes struck by lightning as they tried to land during severe weather.
They are striking pictures. Not just one, but 2 jets hit by lightning over Seattle. Last night's storm around the airport hit the jets as they were preparing to land.
The heaviest rain in 80 years is triggering deadly mudslides in South America. This is southern Peru near Chile. A river of mud ran through town yesterday with the power to wash away cars. At least 24 have died in what's supposed to be the driest time of year.
The scale of the flooding has been difficult to believe. In southwestern Peru, it almost submerged this bridge. Further north, the rain brought down this landslide right in front of emergency workers. Copiapó is the capital of the Atacama region, normally one of the driest places on Earth. It's taken the authorities completely by surprise. Meanwhile, other parts of Chile are suffering from drought. The chaotic weather is testing the country's resilience.
We're going to start here with some pretty serious overnight developments from the flood zone in the mid-south.
It was a night of incredible water rescues after torrential rain triggered major flash flooding.
Overnight, more than 30 million Americans dealing with a deadly string of storms. Tornado warning sirens sounding the alarms as hail, torrential rains, and wind up to 68 miles per hour battered Tennessee, causing power outages in thousands of homes and reports of dime-sized hail in Georgia. In Kentucky Friday, roads collapsing as rushing waters tear through neighborhoods. This morning, firefighters are still battling a fire at this GE plant believed to be sparked by lightning. Overnight in Alabama, up to 5 strikes hitting every minute. Wow! Lighting up the skies.
Rochelle. This is the storm that's producing the tornado near Ashton. From what we are told, it is a large tornado, it is a dangerous tornado, and it is a tornado that has produced damage just to the...
Oh my God, horizontal! Oh my God! Oh my God. This is violent. You guys, it's right there, right there.
Stop. We're good. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Oh my God.
It hit cars. It hit cars.
Look at there goes cars. What?
Oh my God.
I saw headlights go flying. Oh my gosh. Oh shit! He's over!
Oh shit!
Call 911. Go! 911. Go!
Gordon, supercell thunderstorms produced a huge tornado in Illinois, striking different parts of the state. It killed a 67-year-old woman and injured 7 others in a small town in northern Illinois. The tornado also touched down in Rochelle, a small town about an hour and a half southwest of Chicago. One woman said she'd lived there 18 years, but had never seen a tornado that big or stay on the ground that long.
That severe weather in the Midwest, millions affected by tornadoes, hail, flash floods.
But take a look behind me. 70-mile-per-hour winds, perhaps even stronger, ripped part of this roof off. We're seeing damage like this all across this country.
Tornado on the ground.
Overnight wild weather across much of the country. Look at that. Funnel clouds forming across the heartland.
Another one coming down there.
A rainbow appearing in the midst of this tornado. In Kansas, hail hammering drivers so hard, this storm chaser windshield shatters as they battle the elements. This morning in North Carolina, they're cleaning up after hail cracked windows and damaged cars. In Potosi, Missouri,
It hit the transformer.
75-mile-per-hour winds ripping trees from the ground in Ohio.
As you can tell, they're not small trees.
In Idaho, roads in need of a good plow after nearly 6 inches of hail hit the ground. Drivers of cars and buses caught off guard. The St. Louis skyline lit up with lightning. This bolt getting dangerously close to planes.
New tonight, lightning damages a plane, but no one on the plane knew it. That's what we're hearing tonight from a passenger who was on the long flight from Iceland to Denver.
This giant gash in the nose cone of this Iceland Air jet is what greeted passengers on Flight 671 when they landed in Denver.
It's amazing to see what the lightning can do.
Levi Garrett of the band The Bunny Gang is used to loud noises, yet the flight home from an overseas tour was different.
When it happened, no doubt, our drummer, we look up and he's doing that. He gave some to God.
New details this morning on a mysterious light that some residents in the Southwest are saying is out of this world.
And I saw like this blue light in the sky, and I was like, that's kind of bright to be a star. I've never seen a blue star that bright.
I didn't know whether blue. Watched it for probably about 10 minutes, just doing weird stuff, and it would turn on and off the light and it would disappear.
Neighbors living off of Alder Point say the blue light that they saw in the sky was about the size of a dime and started off just above those trees right there and then migrated northwest.
Oh, there it goes sideways.
It pretty much flew, stopped, and then started doing some upward motion and downward motion. So I never seen anything like that.
In all of your 23 years living here, have you ever seen anything?
Nothing. No, nothing. You know, we'll see the police helicopter every once in a while or an airplane go by. That's pretty common, but nothing like this.
Even stranger, they caught this flash of light on video appearing just to the left of the blue light.
Last time we saw it, it had a white flash.
Over 100 dolphins have beached themselves on a shoreline north of Tokyo. Found on a beach, the melon-headed whale dolphins are fighting for survival after police and the local Coast Guard were alerted on Friday morning.
California wildlife officials are now coping with a major crisis involving sea lions. So far this year, more than 2,000 sea lions have been found starving and stranded on California beaches. More than half turned up last month.
John, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration today confirmed that over 2,250 sea lions, mostly pups, have been found in terrible shape on the beaches of Central California. That number is, unfortunately, John, a new record.
Drought in the U.S. state of California is now the worst in over 1,000 years. The region is fast running out of water.
By now, we've all heard about the record-breaking drought in California. The state is heading into its fourth year of bone-dry conditions with little liquid relief in sight. And now, for the first time in California's history, the governor has ordered mandatory water use reductions, saying the state's drought has reached near crisis proportions after a winter of record-low snowfalls.
Well, it's the perfect gift for someone who worships Kanye West. There is now a version of the Bible for sale on Etsy called the Book of Jesus. It's a remix on the Book of Genesis, where every time God is mentioned, the book replaces it with Kanye. The first passage reads, "In the beginning, Kanye created the heaven and the earth." The creators call it an editorial art piece.
And finally, China is being blasted by its worst sandstorm in years, causing widespread chaos to sectors from traffic to industry. Strong gale force winds filled with dust and sand hit the northwest Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region on this Thursday.
Beijing's skyline turned orange in the afternoon because of the sandy weather, with many pedestrians wearing masks to protect themselves from the dust. As strong winds blew dust and sand across the Xinjiang region in the northwest of the country, visibility dropped to less than 10 meters in the area's southern basin, causing electricity blackouts and traffic chaos.
Dozens of homes have burnt in fires in the Khakassia Republic in Russia's remote southern Siberian region.
Several towns were completely devastated after becoming engulfed in flames. The blazes spread quickly because of strong winds, which also hampered efforts by the Russian Emergency Ministry to control the fires.
More than 1,000 firefighters have been tackling the fire, and 2 planes and a helicopter were also deployed.
Ёб твою мать. Ой, господи. Ой, 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 ой. Ой, ой. Мамочки, господи. Ой, блядь. Ой, как жарко-то. Фу.
Incredible pictures of the extreme weather coming in tonight, the deadly dust storm in Utah, and now new pictures emerging of a giant sandstorm, what's called a haboob there in Las Vegas. Just something to see there. In Eugene, Oregon, this car flipped by a small tornado, and tonight flash flood watches across 4 states in the Gulf. You can hear the torrential rain in Mississippi there.
Blowing dust Tuesday blinding drivers near Fresno, and winds gusting over 80 miles an hour in Utah, causing a deadly pileup there. Temperatures plummeting in Salt Lake City, 40 degrees in less than 4 hours. Look at this suburb. That same street today, the snowblowers are out.
Brazil continues to struggle with problems plaguing the preparations for the 2016 Rio Summer Olympics. This time, it's the dead fish floating along the river where the rowing and canoeing events are to take place. 37 tons of dead fish have been removed from the waters by Rio's waste management company since last week.
Dead fish continue to wash up on the banks of the Rodrigo de Freitas Lagoon in Rio de Janeiro. The latest incident affecting thousands of small silvery fish called twait shad began several days ago. Neighbours are complaining about the stench caused by the rotting fish bobbing in the shallows.
The fallout from the record cold we endured this winter is beginning to show now that temperatures are above freezing. In New Hartford, hundreds of dead fish have come to the surface, causing quite a stink along a popular walking trail.
I was just shocked when I saw the shoreline.
Yeah, the fish kill is pretty gnarly.
I always enjoyed the walk, and 2 days ago I noticed there was a very strong odor, and as I viewed the shore, there were a lot of dead fish.
We now have a better idea of the extent of the tragic fish deaths over at the Texas State Aquarium.
Yeah, we've learned that more than 300 fish and marine animals perished in that mishap. Tests are being done on the water and on the medicine.
This was complete surprise and something we could have never predicted.
It was an eerie scene Wednesday at the Texas State Aquarium. Visitors walking by one of the largest tanks in the facility and seeing nothing but water.
Like everyone else, we're going to be looking for explanations as to what exactly caused this so we can guarantee it doesn't happen ever again.
Up and down the beaches of Ocean Shores and the entire West Coast are thousands of dead or dying valellas, cookie-sized jellyfish.
They're really soft and rubbery-like.
There's something this fishing veteran has never seen.
Not in the Puget Sound, never.
And at a time of soaring tensions in the Middle East, Iran says its military is keeping the peace, not threatening it.
Iran's recent nuclear deal with world powers has been touted as a triumph for diplomacy.
Our strategy is one of deterrence. Deterrence as a means of establishing peace and security in Iran and the Middle East.
Five Walmart stores across the country are temporarily closing, they say, for plumbing issues, and one of those stores is at Admiral M Memorial in Tulsa. Now, Walmart says these issues are so large they need 6 months to make these plumbing repairs.
The Tulsa store is one of 5 others across the country that closed this week, all closed for the same plumbing issue reported by the company.
And there was 5 other stores that closed down in California, Texas, and here, and they're all saying plumbing issues. I went to a meeting this morning. They would not give me an exact answer on anything.
About 2,000 Walmart employees let go from 5 locations across the country simultaneously.
I have to put some value in the fact that they're telling me the truth.
Hillsborough County Commissioner Victor Chris says a Walmart executive called him shortly before the closure.
He didn't mention plumbing.
Team investigator Adam Walzer has been doing some digging on this situation. Adam?
Well, employees of the Brandon store were among more than 2,000 employees nationwide who learned that they were being laid off yesterday. In almost identical manners yesterday, Walmart corporate employees visited 5 stores and told them that the stores will be closing that evening. The affected locations were Pico Rivera, California, Los Angeles County, Midland, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Livingston, Texas, and of course here in Brandon. Now, this photo is from that California location. You can see people protesting, about 500 people laid off there. They were told that they had to be closed immediately for 6 months due to those persistent plumbing issues. Now, this was from the Tulsa, Oklahoma store last night, just before it closed. The I-Team has learned that none of those 5 affected stores have sought any plumbing permits for future repairs.